Okay, so for those of you that don't know me, I'm Louise Larson, and I'm a college consultant in Monmouth County, New Jersey. And I do these monthly webinars for anybody that wants to come. Happy to just share information with anybody. I always suggest to people, I don't do a lot with graphics because if I did, I would never get these webinars out. So I would suggest pencil and paper and jot things down. And if you need me to repeat something, you have a question, that's the best way to take in what I'm sharing, and I can repeat things and clarify anything you need me to clarify. So it is May 1st, which is a big day in the college admissions world. This is the day when you make the deadline to make your deposit. So if you know a senior that is headed to college, they probably have made a deposit by today. So congratulations to anybody who has done that. That's very exciting. So in this 2023 admission cycle, there's all sorts of new data out, and I wanted to just share one resource with you. There is a group called College Kickstart, and College Kickstart, oh, this is the 2019. I want the 2027. Here's 2027. Okay, so you can see it's College Kickstart, and if you go to their blog, they've got the 2027 admission results. So you can go in here and just see, all this different data, and I'll just, and you can actually go back in time too and see data from prior years. So you can see here, Cornell and Dartmouth this year were 7% and 6% admit rates respectively. And I'm just going to page down to NYU was 8%. If you go back to, this is class of 2019, and this is all available to you. You can see Cornell and Dartmouth back then were 15% and 10%, and NYU had a 31% admit rate. So I share this information not to make people stress, but more to say that knowledge is power. And when you have that information, you can start to sort out what this might look like for your child. The Vassar went permanently test optional, which I thought was very interesting. And then right after Vassar went permanently test optional, the SUNY system went permanently test optional. And right after them, West Virginia University, which is the state flagship of West Virginia, also went test optional. So permanently, those are three very different schools: a very selective liberal arts, a giant state system, and the flagship from West Virginia. When a school goes permanently test optional, it's a better sign that they're going to give you a holistic read without test scores. They're not necessarily just using it as a marketing tool. It's a clue. You can figure out if they're piloting test optional, maybe scores still matter. The one thing I will tell you is that the SAT is changing in the spring of 2024. So I think a lot of schools might be waiting to see how that shakes out. What does that new SAT look like before they commit to test optional? There has been a lot of good information in the New York Times in the past, probably like the past 6 weeks or so. They do a lot of stuff with college admissions. And there's some good articles in there. There's a new where you can create your own ranking system. There's also a really superb article in the New Yorker. And in that vein, there's also a very good article by Jeff Salingo. And I share this with you as you go out on your college admission tours. One of the worst, well, not the worst, but the most stressful jobs in college, in the college world is not college president, and it's not the football coach. The admissions people, there's a severe issue with burnout and stress. So Jeff Selinger wrote a very good article about that. And it was very interesting. He said half of college admissions people are in their 20s, and half have been in their job less than 3 years. So in that vein, I put all my articles in my social media sites. So I have a group in Facebook called Two River College Consulting. Everything's there. I also have an August Consulting Facebook page. And I almost use these as much to store articles for myself, but everything is there. I also have an Instagram called August.consulting. And I had taken a little pause in some of my social media posting, but you can follow along there. And I try to post relevant quality information and to share with families. The thing I want to talk briefly about that I'm seeing is a shift in how it's going at state flagships. And I don't know the exact time frame, but like 5 to 8 years ago, you could get into University of Florida. That changed. Then you couldn't get into University of Georgia. Then you couldn't get into Auburn. This past year or two, it was like Clemson and South Carolina. All of a sudden, very, very difficult to get in. This year, University of Tennessee became the next thing. So kids I can't get into Auburn, Clemson, and Georgia. I'll try Tennessee. And I jokingly in a professional group I'm in said, okay, and next up will be Kentucky and West Virginia, because kids can't get into Tennessee. They'll just go to Kentucky and West Virginia. But I share this information to say, as of February 15th, University of Tennessee had gotten 49,790 applications. They were up 40%, and their out-of-state applications were up 50%. So I share that, not to alarm you, but knowledge is power. And, I'm a huge fan of state flagships. I like what they offer, and they tend to have a lot of similar hallmarks. They tend to have a really great town. If you think about like Ann Arbor, Michigan, or Athens, Georgia, they tend to have a really neat town around them. They tend to have a broad range of academics. So if your child goes off to study one thing and they have a change of heart, there are going to be options for them at those schools. They tend to have a more manageable price point for families. Even if it's full pay, it might be more manageable than a lot of private schools. They tend to have a great sports community in some capacity, if it's football, basketball, hockey. They tend to have a level of diversity that you just can't find in a lot of places. And by diversity, I mean kids from the country, kids from the city, all different socioeconomics, all different religious, racial. So they tend to have a level of diversity that is not always easy to get. They tend to take a lot of AP and IB credit, so that can be advantageous. But I'm seeing shifts in them all. And this year, the one that I'm really going to be watching is University of Vermont, because they are the second flagship in the country to employ early decision this year. So I saw a big shift in how they were taking their class. The other thing you want to know about these schools is some of them have significant caps on their out-of-state student body. So this year I want to see what UVM did. I'm very curious to see how it goes at Rutgers next year. Now I'm in New Jersey, so Rutgers is our state flagship, and Rutgers, for better or for worse, is going on to the Common App, which is good news. You don't have to do a separate application for Rutgers. The bad news is that they anticipate going from a little over 40,000 applications to over 60,000 applications. They're expecting a 50% increase in applications. So all of a sudden, I'll just go to Rutgers. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. So this past admission cycle, it was Tennessee. I'm curious to see what UVM does. I'm curious to see what Rutgers looks like next year. So that's all the little kind of just current events I have on things that I'm seeing and observing. What I wanted to talk about, and this came from my last webinar, I was jokingly saying it'd be really funny to walk through, like, I sit in this little office and, tell you what to do, but it isn't actually very easy to do any of this. So what I want to do is walk you through some do's and don'ts as you parent from like spring of 8th grade to like drop off August after senior year. And I want to give a little disclaimer here. I'm not an attorney, an accountant, a therapist, a doctor. I was like, I'm sort of nothing, I guess. I don't know. But I want to be clear, I'm not any of those people as I share this information with you. So I'm going to start with 2 don'ts, because I don't like to dwell on the negative. I want to talk about more like the affirmative things that you can do with this. So the 2 don'ts that I have are, don't use we. We aren't doing anything. We are not taking the SAT. We are not doing applications. The children are doing this work. Now, yes, sometimes like we are going to go up to Boston and look at schools. I understand you might use we sometimes, but like you really need to detach and step back and say, this is what my child is doing. The other don't is, my suggestion is that you do not discuss any specifics of your child. And if you are like a 9th grade parent, you might be like, what do you mean? But in like in 11th grade and into senior year, people start to be like, well, she got a 1420, but we're hoping she gets a 1460, you know, that type of information, your kids' grades, your kids' test scores, their specifics, I wouldn't. Now, obviously, if you're at a game and someone's like, oh my gosh, is your kid taking physics? It's so hard. Like, you don't want to be like so secretive, like, I won't tell you if my kid takes physics, but sharing your child's personal information, just don't do it. It's not necessary. So let's talk about the do's, what you can do, what you can do to help your child manage this process, keep your sanity. So the first thing I want to say, and this happened recently in my office, I was meeting with a family. This kid is in 11th grade. They are in amazing shape. List is good. We're, you know, just totally on top of everything. And the meeting was starting to conclude, and the mother burst into tears and said, my baby's going to be leaving. And I share that story to help you realize, like, this is huge. It's a giant decision. It's very expensive. You're sending your child off into the world. It's a huge thing you're doing. So just to kind of acknowledge that. So one of the most important things, you know, if you're a little 8th grader enters 9th grade, you think you have 4 years to kind of organize your college search. But if your child is going to submit, you know, get their applications done before they go to school senior year, you really only have 3 years to see colleges. And then when you start to look at college calendars, they're open from late August to early December, and then again from late January to early May. All of a sudden, it's like, wait, there's not that much time to go see schools. So I suggest just getting on campuses when you can. If you're going up to Boston for a family wedding, drive through a couple schools. If you're headed down to, you know, the Carolinas, drive through a couple schools. Get your little 9th grader on some campuses, because they'll see like the all-you-can-eat ice cream bar and the climbing wall. And you can be like, and that's why you're going to do your homework. And they'll be like, oh, okay. Like they're going to have a tangible thing that they can see. This is why I'm going to maybe take the higher rigor English, or, you know, take a little extra time and go to extra help. So the next thing is find a friend who has done this, who isn't doing it anymore. You can go to them when you're stressed, when it feels like it isn't coming together. You can hear their stories. If you do this with a friend who's in the middle of it, you're going to feed their anxiety. They're going to feed your anxiety. So find a friend who's done it that you can kind of commiserate. Teddy Roosevelt said, comparison is the thief of joy. And as your child progresses through high school, you might see like, oh my gosh, you know, this one's on the honor roll, that one's made the varsity team. I don't really see anything going on with my kid. And do not compare. I had, and this was a friend, she had a gaggle of kids, and one of them was just crazy smart and went to Harvard. And back in the era of SAT subject test, you know, she said she was telling me this quietly, she wasn't bragging. She said he could sit for any SAT subject test and get an 800. And people ask me, how do you get that? And she said to me, what people don't realize is when your kid's that smart, you have a whole nother set of problems. So don't let comparison steal the joy of your child's high school years. Be prepared for some sort of challenge. Social, emotional, physical, academic, discipline, legal, substances, or health. There will probably be a challenge of some sort where it might feel overwhelming is how it might feel. That is probably going to happen at some point with an adolescent. Social, in that vein, social media can be a lonely place. People post Jenny was the MVP, Johnny got the lead in the play. People don't post my kid's in a bad breakup and I'm afraid to leave them alone. People don't post that. So when you see everybody seems to be having all these great things happen and my kid's kind of in a hole, or and I'll tell you what else is a whole nother era. And from when, if you're on this and you're a parent of an adolescent, the rules and the laws around stuff that happens on social media are so serious. This stuff wasn't on the table for us. Like, there just weren't going to be the ramifications when we were going through high school. So you could find your kid in that they inadvertently did something and they're in some pretty serious trouble that you'll figure your way out of, but it's not going to feel good. So social media can be a lonely place. And I'll just say this, that if your child gets in a position where self-harm could be on the table, everything stops. Maybe they drop all their AP classes. Maybe I don't know what, maybe they take a medical leave from high school, but everything stops. First things first. And that might feel like, but doors are going to close because now they're not going to get into Williams, and maybe they won't. I don't know. But first things first. And that could be a very bad feeling if you feel like doors are closing because in 11th grade, they had such severe mono that they were on track for something else. And now maybe they're not. And so that might happen, and that might not feel good, but that's where you go to your mentor friend and you'll hear about, some other kid that had that happen and it all worked out, hopefully. It is critical to really get yourself organized around cost. You need to know, there was a clickbait headline, but it was the truth. University of Miami down in Miami, went up $10,000. And I did a little digging just to put some information together for this. Boston College last year went from 63,000 to this next year is going to be 66,400 just for tuition. It went up $3,500. From 2 years ago, Washington and Lee went up from 75,650 for room, board, and tuition to 2 years later, 82,200. So that's $7,500. If your kid starts at Washington and Lee next year, you're probably going to see $90,000 before they leave. So a lot of people think, okay, full pay is 70 because that's what my nephew paid 6 years ago. But it's not, it's a lot more. So you need to know what the costs are. What is affordable for you? What is your expected family contribution, or in the new lingo that's coming out next year, student aid index? Understand the difference between need and merit-based scholarships, and know the school's money policies. Ivy League schools don't give merit scholarships. So know who gives merit scholarship. If you think you need, that's what's going to need, what it's going to take to put this together for you. Know what schools give merit scholarships, know what don't. Share this information with your child too. This should be a team effort on cost. All right, where's my next thing? Okay, testing. You need to know how much, and this is a bit of a vague thing to know, but how much should you put into testing in terms of time and money? At what point do you say, okay, maybe we're not going to keep going down this road, or do we say we do? But and I don't have the answers for you sitting here, but this is something as a parent, you need to gauge what makes sense for your family. And part of that will come down to some of your child's motivation. Some kind of kids are like, no, I think I can really do the next, and okay, if you're really motivated, if the kid's really like, I don't want to do this anymore. Well, the good news is there's a lot of test optional choices if the scores don't get to where they need to be. This is not, especially if you have been through this with a senior, you will see, oh, this does not make sense. This doesn't seem fair. This isn't logical how they're accepting these kids. If you don't see a Ferris wheel, don't look for fair. It's not going to make sense. I would give your child a lot of space in this project, in this process. A lot of space. You have to detach and let go of your stress, or they will feel it. So you have to detach and let them own this process. And that is not going to be linear. Every adult has acute, honed project skills and problem solving skills that none of us had when we were 16 or 17. And so watching your child kind of flit through this is quite frankly terrifying sometimes, but you've got to let them kind of wander through this, because you would do it, an adult would do it in a very linear way. We'll make a list, we'll do this, we'll do that. And you can do that. And you can drag them through it, and you can, take away their ownership, because it feels better to help them to just know that it's done for your stress. And I understand that. But letting them own it and giving them a lot of space around it takes a level of patience and not quite knowing how it's all going to turn out. But those kids that really own the process arrive on campus a little better to understand what needs to happen when they get to college, why they're there, how they ended up at that school, because they picked it. Super important. Sleep is so important. And every high school kid's going to have some late nights, but if this is a chronic thing where your kid's up till 3 a.m. every night, you're going to have to step in. You need to know, in that vein, I just told you got to detach and let them figure it out. You also need to know when to step in. And that's a fine art to know. I'm just gonna let them go, or nope, we need an adult in the room here. We got to sort this out. I would find ways in the era of, social media, and find ways to authentically laud your child. Find things that your child, because everybody isn't the MVP, everybody isn't the lead, everybody isn't on the honor roll. Finding really authentic ways to laud your child. You can't tell them you're so proud that they're doing so well in school if they're not. So, you got to find what they're doing that is right. And that might be, gosh, I know you're not happy with your math grade, but it's amazing to watch you go to extra help. And this won't be the first time you'll be behind on something and have to sort it out. And the next time you're going to be in really great shape, you're going to know what to do. And this is part of the process. Or, you're such a patient sibling, or you're such a generous friend. Like, finding really authentic ways to tell them that they're doing a good job, and that are true. Because if you tell them you're doing so well and they're not, they're going to be like, they know when you're lying. So really finding authentic ways to compliment them and tell them they're good, and you like some of the stuff that you see, because you might not like it all, but find stuff that you like and tell them. All right. So again, knowing when to step in, very important. The last thing I think I would tell you is you have to put blinders on and focus on your own little thing. And I would liken it to like a pawn on a chessboard. Like, you just have your one little white square, and that's what you focus on. Don't worry about what everybody else is doing. Don't worry about the drumbeat that you will hear, especially as your child gets closer and closer to applying and decisions come out. Just keep an eye on your ball. This is your family's private business, how you choose to approach the financial piece, how you choose to approach grades, how you want to do this is up to you. And there is no one right way. And so what I thought I would do right now is I thought I would walk you through. I'm gonna turn off the recording. Walk you through. Hold on a second.